Hi, I'm Leah Harrison, and I'm the Manager of Research Archives and Heritage at Salt River Project. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm going to be talking about the history of SRP's canal system, the canal system that SRP operates and maintains today. And before I do that, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on SRP generally. SRP is a water and power provider here in the Salt River Valley. We've been serving the valley since 1903. Today, we deliver about 800,000 acre feet of water each year. If you're not familiar with an acre foot as a unit of measurement, if you take a football field and fill it with about a foot of water, that's roughly an acre foot. And we also serve around 1 million power customers each year. Before I jump into the story of the canal system, I wanted to give you an idea of where the water that flows through that system comes from. And primarily, that water comes from snowmelt up on what we call the watershed. So the watershed that SRP helps to maintain is all of this, the streams and tributaries that feed the Salt and Verde rivers.
So you can see kind of a map of that watershed here on your screen. It's about 13,000 square miles worth of watershed and provides water for around 550 square miles here in the valley. So just to give you kind of a visual of where this water is coming from, and it's primarily snowmelt. So that winter precipitation is really important for the water supply that SRP helps to manage. So as I said, we have to go pretty far back in time to tell the story of the canal system here in the Salt River Valley. And we'll start with a group of people that I'm going to call the Hugam today. You may have heard of them as the Hohokam or ancestral Sonoran desert dwellers. There's lots of different terms. This is the term that I'm using today. And these folks lived here in the valley. Their irrigation system was really active from around 200 AD to around 1450 AD. And of course, living here in the valley, they understood that a reliable water supply was really important for maintaining agriculture and just life here in this arid environment. And they actually constructed a very complex network of about 500 miles of canals and laterals here in the Salt River Valley. They were sophisticated engineers. If you think about the tools that were available for digging that kind of canal system during this time frame, it was mostly stone tools. They did not really use animal power, mostly stone tools built by people. So these were really well engineered canals. They really took into account the grade of the canal, the slope of the canal. They used gravity to move water from one side of the valley to the other, and SRP system today is based on this very same principle. And you can see the system that they constructed is sort of the faint gray lines on this map here. SRP's current system are the blue lines. So you can see how they really connect with one another. They supported a population of about 50,000 at its height. This was the only indigenous North American population to use irrigation to this extent. As I said, the irrigation starts to decline around 1450. However, there's a very strong connection between this system and the system that SRP operates today. So people have been living in this place using water in a very similar way for a very, very long time. If you move forward in time, in 1865, Camp McDowell is established here in the Salt River Valley. And with that brings a lot of new settlements, a lot of new people, more development in the area. And one group that came to the valley during this time was a group of 6 gentlemen from Wickenburg who arrived in the valley, Jack Swilling among them, who most of you are probably familiar with. And they sort of found the pathway of an old Hugam canal, and understanding, again, the importance of a reliable water supply here, actually uncovered that pathway and began using a very similar alignment for sort of the first modern canal here in the Salt River Valley, and that was the Salt River Valley Canal. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as Swilling's Ditch. The head of this canal was around what's today 48th Street. We think it's under under Sky Harbor Airport. So that was the original sort of head for this canal. And this, as I said, the first modern canal in the Salt River Valley. It was in use from 1867 when it was constructed through the 1920s. As Phoenix grew around this canal, it was really sort of in the middle of town, and it was kind of in an inconvenient place. So by the 1920s, the growth of the valley had occurred in such a way that this canal was not really convenient, and it was eventually abandoned in the 1920s. However, it was the very first modern canal in the Salt River Valley. I wanted to touch on the Tempe Canal. The Tempe Canal is really important in the valley's history because it is the oldest continuously used canal in the valley. It was built beginning in 1871, finished around 1887. It was built in sections, so it took quite a long time to finish the canal, the full canal system. It was begun, construction began in 1871, and the dam and the headgates for this canal were upstream from Tempe Butte. So again, 6 gentlemen came together to form this canal. They put up $200 for their shares in the canal and in order to finance the project itself. And then an additional 9 individuals agreed to work for their shares in the canal. So they agreed that 100 days of working on the canal equaled the shares of the folks who had put up their $200. And if you brought an animal to the construction site, you got an extra half day of credit for your towards your share. So again, this was built with people and animal power. Most of these early sort of more modern canals. So they had a group, this was a group of farmers who came together. They formed this cooperative in order to build this canal. And the Tempe Canal is a great example of this. That sort of mechanism for building canals changes a little bit in the future, but this is a great example of farmers coming together. They needed irrigation on their property, and so they formed this canal company. They paid assessments, they did their own maintenance on the canal, and it was really, as I said, a cooperative enterprise. And it is today the oldest canal that's been continuously in use in the valley. I have Charles Hayden here because the canal itself went around sort of the south side of Tempe Butte and passed through a water wheel that was at Hayden's Mill right there. The purpose of canals really shifts in the late 1870s, 1880s, and we start to see canals being built here in the valley more for development purposes. And the next 2 canals I'm going to talk about were really, really constructed as part of that development effort. So the Grand Canal, which was constructed between 1878 and 1879, moves sort of through the central part of the valley out to the West Valley. And the purpose of this canal, some investors came together and wanted to build this canal in order to get water to parts of the valley that they could develop. So the Grand Canal Company was actually the first corporation in Arizona that was organized specifically for the construction and operation of an irrigating system. And so the Grand Canal, very important, as I said, for Central and sort of West Valley. I love this photo we have here on the right side of your slide. That's actually Brophy in the background around the 1920s. So the Grand Canal cuts right through sort of the heart of Phoenix. And as I said, it was very important from a development perspective. And the last canal I'm going to talk about is my favorite canal. It's the Arizona Canal. And it just has a great story. So the Arizona Canal, built between 1883 and 1885, is the longest canal in SRP's system. In fact, it's around 40 miles long. And the Arizona Canal was built again by a group of investors who wanted to develop certain parts of the valley, most here the northeast and northwest valleys. So they came together, they created the Arizona Canal Company, and they hired W.J. Murphy, who was a railroad excavator, to build that canal system. And W.J. Murphy brought his crew down from Prescott. They began working on the canal. You can kind of see what that construction might have looked like here in this photo on the left-hand side. And W.J. Murphy was actually often back east working on investment and financing for the project. So while he was gone, his brother-in-law and his wife, Laura Murphy, helped run the construction of the canal. And the folks who were working on the canal lived in these camps that moved as the canal construction progressed. And so Laura Murphy actually lived in the camps with her 6 children and often had the daunting task of helping to feed all the people who were working on the canal system. So this was really a joint effort between W.J. Murphy and Laura Murphy in building the Arizona Canal. And the Arizona Canal was huge for the development of the West Valley in particular. The folks that were building the Arizona Canal also helped form First National Bank of Arizona. They helped finance the construction of Grand Avenue in 1887. So if you're going to get water out there, you got to get a good road to get to these places. They were very active in founding West Valley communities like Glendale and Peoria. So these canal companies were important, of course, from an irrigation perspective, but they also played a really large role in the broader development of the Salt River Valley. And the Arizona Canal, on the banks of the Arizona Canal, was one of the valley's first sort of resorts. So it was built by W.J. Murphy and his son around 1910, and it was called the Ingleside Club initially, golf course, tennis courts, lots of recreation here. By 1920, they'd added a hotel to the site, and they called it the Ingleside Inn. The tagline for the Ingleside Inn was "Where Summer Winters." So we're getting our first snowbirds here in the 1920s, right on the bank of the Arizona Canal, by again those same investors who helped build the canal itself. So if you've ever been to the Arizona Country Club, that is the site of the Ingleside Inn. The buildings are no longer there, but it's the same site today as the Arizona Country Club. So these canals were built in large part by private corporations or cooperatives of people. And so how did they become part of the Salt River Project? Well, the Salt River Project, SRP, is a federal reclamation project. And the National Reclamation Act, which was passed in 1902, provided federal funding in the form of loans in order to build these reclamation projects. So the big construction project, of course, was Roosevelt Dam during that time period. However, we had this existing canal system, and the folks in the valley who helped form SRP and the federal government agreed that it would really make sense to operate that canal system as one unit versus disparate canals with different rules and different processes. So the federal government in 1906 actually began purchasing the existing canal system in the valley to be part of the Salt River Project. So by 1911, when Roosevelt Dam is completed, we have a brand new dam and a unified canal system in the Salt River Valley. I wanted to talk briefly about the people who played such an important part in helping to move water from the canal system to the end user. And that is a group that we call at SRP Zanjeros. And the term zanjero translates loosely from Spanish to ditch rider. So these were the people who were taking water, physically opening gates, opening turnouts, and moving water from the canal system into SRP's system of laterals to deliver that water to the end user. So they are responsible for getting the right amount of water to the right place at the right time. And they played a huge part in sort of the community in the early development of the valley. They lived in their service areas. So you can see an example of one of the houses that they would have lived in here. So they lived in the zone that they served. This was a 24/7 job. They were moving water all the time. So if the zanjero was out in the field, usually their wives took water orders on the phone from home. So they played a really important role in the development of the valley. And by the 1950s and 60s, this becomes shift work. So it's not living in your service area. It's not a 24/7 job. And today, SRP continues to employ zanjeros on staff to help get, as I said, the right amount of water to the right place at the right time. So this is a really important person that connected with the canal system. In the early 1900s, around 1910, SRP starts looking at building some low-head hydro on the canal system. So in the 1910s, 19-teens timeframe, SRP builds several of these low-head hydro systems. Some of them are still in use today. You'll see Arizona Falls there on the right. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Arizona Falls later in the presentation. But from very early on, SRPs utilized the canals for water delivery, but also to generate electricity. I want to touch on our dams. I know we're focusing on canals, but the dams are very important for the canal system as well. So today, most of the water, as I said, that flows through those canals comes from the reservoir system that SRP manages as well. So we have 4 dams on the Salt River, 2 dams on the Verde River, a diversion dam at the confluence of the Salt and Verde rivers, which helps move water from the river systems into the canal system. And then finally, an additional dam, C.C. Cragen Dam, that's on East Clear Creek that you don't see on this map, but is another reservoir and dam that SRP helps to manage. So as the valley grows post-World War II, we see a tremendous shift in land use here in the Salt River Valley. And people are shifting from an agricultural use to a more urban use. And as a result of this shift, SRP makes some modifications to our water delivery system in order to help get water that is useful to those urban users. So SRP delivers raw water. Urban users like to have treated water at their homes. So we implement some changes that help urbanize and modernize the system. And one of the first things that SRP does is to begin modernizing the water delivery system itself. So this is the point in time, 1950s, where we start to see laterals being lined, laterals being piped, canals being lined, just really modernizing and upgrading that system. And then the other step that SRP takes during this time period is to begin delivering water directly via the canal system to water treatment facilities in partnership with the cities that SRP serves. So we began in 1952 with the city of Phoenix, and SRP today serves 10 different cities here in the valley. I also wanted to touch on cleaning the canals. So for a long time, the images you see here are how SRP's canals were cleaned. We had teams of horses that would drag some discs behind them that would kind of tear up the vegetation that grows in the bottom of the canal system. And there is quite a bit of vegetation that can grow in the canal system or in the lateral system. And of course, that takes water and slows down the movement of the water. So it's sort of a big maintenance process for SRP to clean the canal system. So they would drag these discs and they would pull out the vegetation, or we would use a dredger, which you can see on the bottom there. The dredgers would kind of scrape and pull out some of that vegetation that developed in the canal system. And these are difficult, time-consuming, costly methods of cleaning the canals. So in the 1980s, SRP entered into a pilot program with Arizona Game and Fish to utilize a type of carp called a white aimer to help clean the canal system. And it was so successful, this is the method that SRP uses today. So our canal system has these white aimer in the system. They eat something like 50% of their body weight every day in vegetation. And they help clean the canal system and keep the water flowing. And we always like to joke that they're our best employees. They work 24/7 and their whole job is eating. So they have a pretty good gig. But this is just a sort of a creative solution that SRP's implemented to help keep our canal system clean. I mentioned Arizona Falls earlier. Arizona Falls is a great example of some of the projects that Brianna is going to talk about in a little bit. But these, Arizona Falls was originally, when they built the Arizona Canal, they hit a granite outcropping, which you can see in the photo there on the right. And rather than blast through it, they just decided to leave it, and it created this beautiful waterfall. And shortly thereafter, in 1902, some engineers came along and said, this is the perfect place to build a hydroelectric generating station. So in 1902, they built a hydroelectric station there. SRP took over operation of Arizona Falls in 1911, and it operated from about that time frame through the 1950s when it was taken offline. And in 2003, SRP partnered with the City of Phoenix and the Bureau of Reclamation to revitalize the site. And you can see what the new Arizona Falls looks like in that image on the lower left. They hired some artists to come in and sort of redesign and make this wonderful space that still generates electricity and is a great opportunity to see how the canal system and the water and power pieces fit together. I highly recommend to visit it. It's at 56th Street and Indian School. Probably not right now, a little warm, but in October it will be lovely. So please take a trip to Arizona Falls. There's lots of great signage there, but this is just an opportunity if you want to interact with the canal system. There's lots of opportunities to do that, and Arizona Falls is one of the best. And I wanted to wrap up with just some places you can go to learn more about SRP history. So we published a book a couple of years ago called The Story of SRP, and you can download a PDF or an ebook version of that book at srpnet.com/ebook. If you visit our history website, srpnet.com/history, there's a heritage map tab that you can click on and pull up an atlas that we created which is pretty new. And it has tabs for historic water features, power features, all of the public art that's along SRP's canal system is mapped in that atlas, and you can see the locations, and there's some interpretation of all of that public art. All of the interpretive signage that's out along SRP's canal system that tells you the history of that exact spot you're standing in is mapped on this atlas as well. So it's a great opportunity if you want to learn more about some of the historic water and power features around you, or explore the canal system. The atlas is a really great way to do that. And with that, I will hand it over to Brianna.
Thank you, Leah. Let me get my PowerPoint up if I can. What am I sharing for you? There we go. So thank you. I get to follow Leah, which is never my favorite thing because I can listen to her presentations all day, every day, just because I learned so much from her. But again, my name is Brianna McHenry. I am actually working as the program coordinator for Canal Multiple Use projects at SRP. So Jim is my boss and also my mentor through all of the fabulous projects that are coming my way. So I'm extremely excited about that. I want to, let me see, make sure I move it along. So this is kind of what we're gonna go over today with my presentation. Biggest question is gonna be, what is canal multiple use? Just because it's not a very common term. So if you hear me say CMU or canal multiple use, I'll kind of go over and cover what canal multiple use is. But again, we use that term a lot of times internally, and even internally, a lot of folks don't necessarily know what that means. So I'll kind of go over that. I want to touch base on the important side of the design guidelines, along with just basic CMU statistics on some of those projects that have been done. I'll show you some images of existing CMU projects, and then also touch base on some special events that occur along the canal banks. Again, great opportunity to kind of really bring that awareness of where the water is coming from. So what exactly is canal multiple use? So essentially it's an extension of the 1964 agreement that we had done with the Bureau. That agreement basically gave you the definition of what recreational use is out on the canal banks. So you can kind of see it's where it was defined as, bicycling, horseback riding, people are walking and jogging, and that covers the entire system of the SRP canal system so that you can recreate along those paths. Canal multiple use is kind of where I say it takes it almost one step further, and that's where those projects come in with the cities, where aesthetics come in, recreational amenities like seating or drinking fountains. Those kind of components start coming into play with canal multiple use projects, and again, all kind of driven by the cities, and then with coordination with SRP. So this agreement was actually extended in 2015 for another 25 years. So I always joke with Jim because bring on more projects. I'm very excited about that. But again, like I said, it's we can continue to work with the cities on these projects. So some of the items that I want to kind of call out first and foremost is just the use that is permitted along the canal banks themselves. A lot of people will see the green signs posted along our entire system, and those green signs basically give just the idea of, no water activity, no swimming, no unauthorized motorized vehicles that are allowed along the paths themselves. I know some people have memories of potentially water skiing in the canals, but that's a no-no. So we don't want to be doing that. But the use that is permitted along the canal banks are the recreational improvements, which we'll go over with landscaping, lighting, and public art, along with the utility crossings and pedestrian bridges that you'll see in some of those images. And then, of course, special events. Now, I just want to highlight, and the biggest takeaway on this slide in general is these the recreational improvements, even the special events, those are all licensed. So the projects themselves that we work with the cities on, those are licensed to the cities to maintain, to basically they're holding an agreement with us to say that they're going to hold up what they say they're going to do. And so we set those terms to make sure that those projects will be licensed to them. Special events, same thing. The organizations will go to our land department. They'll let them know if they're wanting to do a marathon or say a bike ride. They run their details through our land department, and then our land department is able to give them a special event permit. That's probably the biggest takeaway just from this particular slide. The design guidelines. So the design guidelines this was a set of guidelines that were developed to really kind of give an idea to the cities on what they can place and where they can place them for these projects. So, you know, if the city's interested, the biggest thing is to make sure that they start the conversation early with SRP. So that way I can make sure I give them the guidelines so they can kind of have an idea of what some of our restrictions are and our requirements are. The other thing just to kind of highlight with these is that there are not technical specifications in these guidelines for the cities. So it is up to the city, and it's the city's responsibility to make sure that they know what type of operations and vehicles that we may be using along those canal paths. And so knowing that if there's any damage done along the path, it is going to be their responsibility to maintain and to repair. Just because, again, the biggest thing with our system, it is a working infrastructure. And so the recreational use is an added benefit, but again, first and foremost, it is working infrastructure for SRP. So this kind of shows some of those components that, again, it takes a lot of coordination and multiple different groups between both SRP and our water and power operations maintenance side. You can see some of the images of some of the types of work that's done on a daily basis along the canal system. And so making sure that they're coordinating with those various groups with all of these different components during either the plan of their construction or just the design elements of their path itself. So I will show this one as well. This is our dry up side. So all 131 miles of our canal system is completely lined. And so we have our entire system on a schedule of every 10 years, different sections of the canal are going to get dried up, and dry ups usually occur fall and then early winter. So November to January timeframe, we'll do different sections of the canal system. And again, it has to be in coordination. So this is where we're going to be removing silt. I know Leah covered the white aimer. This is where a lot of times the public likes to come out because they get to see us herd the fish and be able to take them to a different location, because again, they are our best employees. So we want to make sure that they continue working hard for us in other locations while we do the repairs to these sections of the canal. So again, if there's repairs to, say, a pedestrian bridge that the city may have placed in there, then again, it's all about coordination. So if we have a scheduled dry up and it's going to happen to be during that time, it's a great way to touch base with us so that those repairs can be done with the dry up itself. So again, coordination and communication is key with these projects. The CMU statistics. So I just want to kind of give a high level of just different facts on each of these projects. Out of the 131 miles, we have 85 miles of completed trails that the cities have done. There's currently 2 projects right now in construction. We have one with the city of Tempe next to the Western Canal. It's the Western Canal Extension Project. We also have one with the city of Mesa, and that's on the Eastern Canal, and they should be completed probably within the next month or 2. A typical time frame for these projects from design to completion is about 24 months, and again, it varies, of course, but another component that a lot of people tend to be interested in is what are some of those sources of these projects for the cities. And again, it's federal transportation funds, city bonds, public art, which you'll see in a couple of the existing CMU project slides, where you can see public art being incorporated into those projects, along with SRP aesthetic funding. So this is one of my favorite slides, just because I know from my background too, just from the event side, being able to communicate to the community and let them know what our canal system fully looks like, along with showing them the paved trails. So you can see our entire system, and then everything that you see in yellow are all the paved trails that have been completed along the path itself. We estimate on the entire system annually about a little over 900,000 recreational users, and that's the whole system, not just the paved trails. I personally, and I know Jim thinks so too, it's kind of on the lower end. I feel like it's probably closer to more of 1 million users, just because, but we're still trying to figure out getting better accurate numbers to get those counts. But again, like I said, it's one of my favorite pieces. Is this piece has just been completed, so if anyone's interested in having the PDF, I can send you guys the PDF of this particular map. You can always go to srpnet.com/canals, and you can go in if you're ever interested in just, figuring out how far you'd like to go for a bike ride or a walk. You can do a little canal calculator to figure out your distance on there. So again, I can send that PDF over if you guys are interested. So I added this one in here just because I thought, to give you guys an idea, this is the green dots symbolize design and construction projects. So it shows the different conversations that are going on currently right now for the canal system. So the Eastern and the South Canal have a few more going, or we're starting to get going on some of those projects right now. The one that I kind of mentioned, the one on the Western extension, is down below, along with, I know the town of Gilbert's looking at a couple of things on our Western lateral. So CMU projects, these are just some of the projects that have been completed. You can kind of see the real just basic components that you'll find in most of the projects. You're going to have the paved path. You can see the pedestrian bridge, the lighting that they have, along with the wayfinding signage for folks out there. Again, these are real, just basic ones that most of the time is what you're going to see in most of their projects. And then I'm going to show you a little more of the bigger ones here. So our Grand Canalscape project, that was recently completed. It was one of the longest projects in the sense of it goes approximately 12 miles from I-17 to the Tempe-Phoenix border along the Grand Canal. This path was City of Phoenix project. Jim lived this project for about 5 years or more. But you can see they added multiple signalized crossings for folks with this project. They had pedestrian bridges, there was lighting, there's some seating areas. It was quite a feat for this particular project. And again, it was recently completed. We just did the dedication back in February. And I know the City of Phoenix is looking to do another stretch along the Grand, hopefully soon. So this one I wanted to show. So when I kind of mentioned with the funding side of things, I mentioned the public arts component. So you can see the Highline Canal project the City of Phoenix had done, but a part of that project was playing up a lot of the public art. And so there's unique seating areas. So they took it beyond just, say, the path and the lighting to seating areas. They provided different public art. You can see the different components in there. I'm going to give Leah a little plug on this one for her atlas that she has at that history website, srpnet.com/history. You can find the atlas, and you can actually find these locations there if you're ever kind of out and about and you want to take a look at the public art that's out there. But again, this, you can see the extent of, going from just a path and lighting to a little more intricate in what they're putting out there. Again, some of the amenities that you'll find, they'll do sandblasting a lot of times in the past. You have seating, signage, interpretive signs. There are interpretive signs that you can find along the paths as well that kind of go into some of the history. That's found on our website if you're ever interested in kind of seeing what those look like. So this kind of goes into some of the different components that you may find incorporated into those city projects. So as your poll question had mentioned, the $11 million of commissioned public art. So this was an inventory that was done a couple years back. So it's probably a little even more than 11 million now. But the cities like to feature different components in their paths. And so they're kind of branching out and looking at unique ways of kind of bringing a different element to these. And so, again, it's a little over 11 million, probably even closer to 12 now. We just have to update it with some of the projects that have been completed. So special events. So special events can occur along the canal banks. They just have to get that special event permit. But again, people have marathons, bike races. You can see some of the promotional material here from some of what they've done out there along the canal paths. But again, it's a great way for the canals to really bridge with the community. So it's almost bringing people back out to the canal banks. Since, urbanization kind of grew up, everyone kind of started forgetting about the canals. And now that with these projects the cities have done, it's almost like we're bringing people back. And so these special events also allow us to kind of get out there and be able to educate. So Scottsdale Waterfront, definitely one of the popular locations. It's a very unique location, however. So this location, again, is very different than any other part of our canal system. There's a lot that actually went into this particular project, and I know that Jim can probably go into even more detail than I can because he lived this one. But basically, there's a lot of unseen engineering aspects that are built into this project itself. So along both banks in the grass areas, there's a geogrid system to kind of help support some of our equipment going in there. We also strategically place manholes so that we have easier access to our underground power in this area. So it's definitely, it was a working together, partnering up with the city of Scottsdale to really make this project come together. It's a very popular location for special events. I know that I'm going to show you a slide further for one of the ones that a lot of people go out to, and if you haven't, I would highly recommend it. But again, it's a unique area. It's a great way for us to be able to maybe do a tour of some sort to really kind of walk you through all the different components that are out there. So Leah had mentioned Arizona Falls, and so of course I'm just kind of giving you guys the aerial. But this is, again, another great location. It's an educational opportunity for us. It's kind of where, an engineer, an artist, and the cities all came together somehow and all spoke the same language and was able to kind of come up with the most unique site, I would say, along our system that people visit regularly. Again, it's where we would do K through 12 tours. We've hosted some international type of tours at these for conferences if they want to come out and take a tour there. Science and engineering events, if there's any kind of, they can use the site for any of those. But again, I highly recommend going to visit this site. And then I mentioned to you guys the one particular event I was going to highlight from Scottsdale Waterfront, and that is Canal Convergence. It has now become the city of Scottsdale's signature event, especially in the fall. It's usually about a 10-day event in November timeframe. I know this year is going to be a little different, but they're still planning on having art installations in the canal and along the banks in November. So it went, and Jim has a lot of the history on this one too, but it went from, you know, someone having to actually go to our board, SRP board, for approval just to have styrofoam float to the surface of the water to, as you can see in that bottom picture, a over 250-foot serpent that breathes fire to music. So definitely different, and it's come a long way. Last year, they talked about over 300,000 people came out to the event. Again, a great way for SRP to be out there and talking about all things water. We can explain the waterfront, we can explain our entire system and actually where their water is coming from. So if you ever November timeframe want to get out, definitely come by the waterfront to take a look at the Canals Convergence event. That's all I have. So I will stop my sharing.
Okay, I think we're getting down towards the end, but I think there's just a few questions. So I think we have time to address those. And thank you, Leah, and thank you, Brianna and Tom. That was a brief presentation trying to pack a lot of information in there. I always enjoy presentations, you know, to a more technical group, to an engineering group. I am not an engineer. You know, I, with all due respect to all the engineers in the room, I know Tom and I used to joke about this, that at projects like Arizona Falls, despite the engineering involvement, it still turned out to be a place of beauty, thanks to the artists that were involved. But it really is just that. I think if you listen to Leah's history involvement, the canals used to be part of the social fabric of Phoenix. It's where people went. It's what grounded them. It was what oriented them to the valley. And then we got away from that, and that's understandable through urbanization. But there has been for some years now a very strong return to the discovery of the canals, and that is thanks to a very strong marriage between the arts and engineering. And so with that, I mean, I think we have a great future to look forward to. I think the canal system presents one of the best off-road trail systems, arguably the best in Maricopa County. I'm going to turn my attention to the questions now, and I'm just going to restate these. So there was a question here. I grew up in Phoenix, and our subdivision received water from SRP for irrigating lawns. For all I know, it still does. Is this considered to be a perpetual water right? Also, if farmland that is now irrigated by SRP is converted to other uses, does the land retain the irrigation rights? Big question. The answer is yes. In Arizona, the land, or the water right runs with the land. It doesn't transfer. So yes, if you lived in a subdivision that received water, that land you live on, that same subdivision still retains water rights. Now, whether or not it's practical to get water to that property is another question. Over the years, many subdivisions have just really done away with flood irrigation. SRP has an obligation to provide water to the high point of a quarter section. So if you own property, you may have the water right, but it would be your responsibility to get that water from a high point of a quarter section to your property. So for the most part, subdivisions, developers make that decision to just do away with the water. Not the water right, but the delivery of the water to that property. Same with the farmland. If it is converted to other uses, the water right never goes away. It's just not being used on that property. And Leah, Tom, Brianna, if you have anything else that you want to chime in, please do so. The second question is, I've seen people fishing in the SRP canal. Is this a permitted recreational use? It is with a state fishing license. However, our favorite employees that Leah talked about, those are classified as a catch and release only fish by Arizona Game and Fish. So you cannot remove them from the canal. But fishing is quite popular. We see people fishing from the banks, again, quite often. Mostly what they're catching are catfish. The water typically is a little too warm for the other species, but you never know quite what you're going to find in the canal. Who are SRP's biggest water users today? Leah, would you like to address that question?
Sure. I think the cities are SRP's probably largest deliveries. So as I mentioned, in 1952, SRP began delivering water directly to cities at water treatment facilities. So the city will treat the water and then deliver it to the end user on SRP's behalf, according to the water rights that Jim mentioned. So the cities are definitely SRP's probably biggest users. We also still have agricultural users on our system. So those are probably the other large water users that SRP still delivers to. So I would say those are probably the two biggest deliveries that SRP makes.
In fact, I think a rough percentage split is about 85, in the 80s anyway, low to mid 80% of the water is delivered to municipal water treatment plants. And the balance is being delivered for urban irrigation, agriculture, and other uses. What type of liner is used in the canal? A good question. So the concrete, the canals are lined with concrete. The bottom of the canals are tamped concrete, and the banks or the walls of the canal is a fiber reinforced shotcrete, concrete material. And that is what is used today to line the canals. And I think as both Leah and Brianna mentioned, the entire canal system is lined, and that is strictly for efficiency and for conservation of water. Let's see, where, I'm trying to, let me see. Are there plans by either Phoenix or Paradise Valley to implement improvements along the Arizona Canal from east of Arizona Falls to the Biltmore Resort? I could put Brianna on the spot and ask her to answer that, but she hasn't had that much experience with that area yet. I can tell you there are no plans on the table right now. So the area between the Biltmore Hotel and Paradise Valley, I will tell you that is an area that has a very strong opinion that they like the canal very natural. That doesn't mean there won't be constructed improvements at some time, but for now, there are no plans on the table by the city of Phoenix or Paradise Valley for improved recreational trails in that area. Let's see, where is the Tempe waterfront? Well, okay, so let me clarify. I think maybe the question meant where is the Scottsdale waterfront, which is what Brianna, would you like to address that? Are you still
Oh,
there?
yeah. No, I'm here. Sorry. Yeah. No, yeah. So Scottsdale waterfront is going to be kind of right near your Fashion Square, so the mall. So between Goldwater and Scottsdale Road, that kind of stretch right there. I mean, it's a quarter-mile stretch, so it's not huge. But again, if you're ever out, say at Olive and Ivy, the waterfront's going to be right there, so you'll be able to see that. So it's right in that central downtown area.
Right. So the Scottsdale waterfront, I'm sure many of you have been to events there. It's a highly utilized area by the city of Scottsdale. Variety of events that are held there throughout the year. And it was the signature location that Scottsdale wanted to use to bridge their Scottsdale Fashion Square development to their Old Town area. And it's done a very good job with that. I see another question here. It appears that the new homes in Arcadia are not using irrigation water and installing city water irrigation systems instead. What impact does all the non-SRP irrigated yards have on the canal system? So what we have there is, first of all, the better part of the Arcadia area is only a small portion of it is served by SRP. Most of it is served by the Arcadia Water Company. Nevertheless, this question is a good one in that if all those, I'll take it, kind of step back. All those farm fields that are no longer farming, that are now houses that are not taking water, what is the impact of that? Well, what happens is that water right stays with the land, but the use of the water doesn't necessarily go away. What happens is the water is taken by the municipality. So the municipality pays the assessment, the cost to deliver the water. That's then the water that gets delivered to the water treatment plants. It's treated and then sent back out as potable water. And Leah, I think I'll defer to you here. I believe always the question comes up, has there been a significant change in use of water as we've transitioned from agrarian to a more urbanized area? And I think things have stayed about the same.
That's correct.
Okay, so water usage has not gone either up or down dramatically as we've converted from agriculture. Let's see, I think I see a last question here. I remember a number of canal breaks during storms in the 1980s. The Arizona Canal now has the AC/DC to protect it. Are other canals also protected against breaks today? Boy, I almost ought to defer this to Tom, because I know Tom has extensive experience when he was at SRP in working with it. So I will just say that this is correct. The AC/DC was constructed to protect Arizona Canal. There are spillways built into the Arizona Canal. There are other points. The Arizona Canal is interconnected with spillways into Indian Bend Wash. The Grand Canal has a spillway available to drop the entire capacity of the water to the Salt River bed. So there are protection points, and really we have not had any serious canal damage with these protections in place, with the AC/DC, which is the Arizona Canal Diversion Channel, and these other points. Let's see, interest, is that Tom?
Yeah. If you don't mind, I just
Sure.
want to add that SRP over the years that I've worked there worked very closely with the Maricopa County Flood Control District to identify the vulnerable locations and to remedy those. SRP usually took the position that the canals were there first, but it's up to the cities and the Flood Control District to fund a lot of these. But SRP has been very cooperative in all the projects that you mentioned along the canals. So a big thanks goes out to the Flood Control District and to all the taxpayers that helped fund that budget to reduce and prevent flooding in the Phoenix area. Thank you.
Great, and I know we're just a minute past, but there's just one question left, and I will mention that it says, you mentioned that SRP is responsible for delivering only to a high point within each area. Does this mean that many of the canals seen throughout the valley are private and not maintained by SRP? No, the canals, not all of the canals in the Maricopa County area are SRP. 131 miles, excuse me, are managed by SRP, but that really is independent from the high point delivery. So the 131 miles of the canal system that Brianna showed you the map that you saw with Leah, those are all maintained completely by SRP. The delivery just simply means the water, instead of flowing to a particular piece of property, is now flowing out of the canal in a different location into a municipal water treatment plant, and then being put back out to those properties as potable water. It doesn't impact the amount of the canal system that is SRP or not. I hope that answers that question. If anyone else wants to chime in, welcome to. But again, yeah, two different things. The entire canal system is maintained by SRP. We just have fewer delivery points, honestly, today than we did years ago, because so much of it is going to the treatment plants.
Hi, Jim. One
yeah.
question that came in through the chat box. Has
Okay.
there been consideration or pressure to fence the canals from a pool barrier safety perspective?
So this is a question that comes up quite often. The canal banks are open for recreation. And there are people that will ask, why are the canals not fenced? It comes down to a variety of things. One, need of access and maintenance practices of SRP for the canal are inhibited by fencing along the canals. And the fact of the matter is that just, even with fencing, and I'm not going to make an argument for water safety here. I'm just going to say that even canal systems that are completely fenced, like the Central Arizona project, people do go over the fences, and there are still drownings. So we have found that the number of people that use our canals, if you think of the hundreds of thousands of people that safely use our canals, the number of people that are watching over those banks, the fencing is just, it is not a practical course to follow, both based on maintenance needs. And if you dig into the statistics for people that accidentally maybe get into the canal, like with CAP, if there's a fenced barrier, then it's almost impossible to get people out. So it's a touchy subject. I mean, water safety is very important to the SRP. We go to great extents to make sure that people practice water safety. The cities design their improvement projects along the canal banks to every national safety standard, and that's how we have gone forward.
Jim, I have
Yes.
one question. You touched on this a little bit earlier here, relative to resilience. ASC has a focus on sustainability and resilience. Has SRP looked at the canal system from a resilience standpoint with climate change, subsidence? Have you done any kind of a focused look at potential impact?
Wow, that's a big question. I know that we continue to look at best practices to deliver water. That is through vegetation management, through lining of the canal, ensuring, spending a great amount of effort ensuring, trying to eliminate surface runoff into the canal to protect the water quality. We are looking at a variety of methods, both for our canal system and for our distribution system, which is the 1,000 miles of pipe and lateral, to better protect it, to detect leaks, to find new and better ways to repair leaks. Again, you have to think that we're operating in almost an exclusive urban area. The days of going out because you have a leaky pipe and just dig it up and fix it is not a simple thing anymore. It requires lane closures, street closures. It's just not possible anymore. And so with everything from liners and pipe to new methodology of pipe repair and leak detection, that is where we've been putting a lot of effort in the protection of our system.
Thank you. I have a 108 here, so I think we'll conclude. I'd like to thank, on behalf of ASCE, Jim, Leah, and Brianna, and Tom for a great presentation and discussion. And with that, we'll conclude today's branch luncheon, and look forward to seeing everybody next month. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.